I replaced Windows with Linux, and honestly, I didn't expect it to feel this different. At first, it was just curiosity. You know that feeling when you've been using the same thing for years and suddenly you start wondering if there's something better out there? That was me. I had been using Windows pretty much my entire life. It was familiar, comfortable, and honestly, I never questioned it much. But over time, little frustrations started building up. Updates showing up at the worst possible times, random slowdowns, background processes eating up resources, and that constant feeling that I wasn't fully in control of my own system. So one day, I decided to try Linux. Not just test it for a few minutes, but actually replace Windows completely and use Linux as my main operating system. No going back unless absolutely necessary. And let me tell you, the difference was insane. The first thing that hit me was how fast everything felt. I'm not talking about a small improvement. I mean a noticeable, immediate difference. My system booted faster, applications opened quicker, and everything just felt lighter. It was like my computer suddenly had new life, the same hardware, but a completely different experience. That's when I realized how much overhead Windows had been adding all along. Then there's the installation process. I expected it to be complicated, maybe even a bit intimidating, but surprisingly, it was straightforward. I downloaded a Linux distribution, created a bootable USB, and within minutes, I was installing a new operating system. No forced account creation, no endless setup screens asking for unnecessary data. It felt clean and simple, almost refreshing. Once I got into the desktop environment, that's when things really started to feel different. Linux gives you choices, and I don't just mean a few settings here and there. I mean full control over how your system looks, behaves, and operates. You can pick different desktop environments, customize themes, change workflows, and make your system truly yours. On Windows, customization always felt limited, like you were working within boundaries. On Linux, those boundaries are almost gone. At first, I'll admit, it felt a bit overwhelming. So many options, so many distributions, so many ways to do things. But at the same time, it was exciting. Instead of being locked into one way of using a computer, I could experiment and find what actually worked best for me. One of the biggest differences I noticed was how software is handled. On Windows, installing programs usually means going to websites, downloading .exe files, and clicking through installers. On Linux, most software comes from repositories. It's like having a built-in app store, but more powerful. You open a package manager, search for what you need, and install it with a single command or click. No ads, no bundled junk, no hidden surprises, just clean installations. And then there's the terminal. I used to think the terminal was this scary thing only for advanced users. But after switching to Linux, I started using it more and more, and honestly, it's one of the most powerful tools available. Once you get comfortable with a few basic commands, you can do things faster than you ever could with a graphical interface. It's not mandatory, but it's there if you want that extra level of control. Another huge difference is updates. On Windows, updates always felt intrusive. They would interrupt my work, restart my system, and sometimes even break things. On Linux, updates are handled differently. They're quick, non-intrusive, and you're in control of when they happen. No forced restarts, no surprises. It feels like the system respects your time. Performance is another area where Linux really shines. Even on older hardware, Linux runs incredibly well. It doesn't demand as many resources, which means you can get more out of your machine. I've seen systems that struggled with Windows run smoothly on Linux. It's like giving your computer a second chance. Security is also a big deal. Linux is known for being more secure, and after using it, I can see why. The way permissions work, the lack of unnecessary background services, and the overall design make it harder for malware to cause damage. Plus, since most software comes from trusted repositories, the risk of downloading something malicious is much lower. But let's be real for a second, it's not all perfect. There are challenges. Some software that you're used to on Windows might not be available on Linux, especially certain professional tools or games. However, this is changing rapidly. With tools like compatibility layers and growing developer support, more and more software is becoming accessible on Linux. Gaming, for example, used to be a major drawback, but now it's a completely different story. Many games run natively on Linux, and others work through compatibility tools with impressive performance. It's not perfect yet, but it's much better than most people expect. Another thing that took some getting used to was the learning curve. Even though Linux has become more user-friendly, it's still different from Windows. You might need to look things up, learn new concepts, and adapt your workflow. But honestly, that's part of the experience. And once you get past that initial phase, it becomes second nature. What really stood out to me was the sense of control. On Linux, you're not just a user, you're the owner of your system. There's no hidden agenda, no forced features, no unnecessary restrictions. You decide what gets installed, what runs, and how everything works. That level of freedom is something I didn't realize I was missing until I experienced it. Privacy is another big factor. Linux distributions generally don't collect user data the way some other operating systems do. There's no feeling of being constantly monitored or tracked. It's just you and your system without anything in the background sending information somewhere else. Over time, I started to notice how my relationship with my computer changed. It wasn't just a tool anymore, it felt more like something I understood and controlled. I wasn't fighting against the system or working around limitations. Instead, I was working with it. Even simple things like file management felt smoother. The system felt more organized, more predictable. There were fewer random issues and less troubleshooting needed. Everything just worked the way it was supposed to. Another surprising benefit was how much I learned. Switching to Linux pushed me to understand how my system works on a deeper level. I learned about file systems, permissions, processes, and more. It wasn't forced learning. It happened naturally as I explored and customized my setup. And then there's the community. The Linux community is massive and incredibly helpful. If you run into a problem, chances are someone else has already solved it. Forums, guides, and tutorials are everywhere. It's like having a global support network. After using Linux for a while, going back to Windows feels different. Things that used to seem normal now feel restrictive. The lack of control, the heavier performance, the forced updates, all of it stands out more. That's not to say Windows is bad. It still has its place, especially for certain use cases. But once you experience Linux, you start to see what's possible when an operating system is designed with flexibility, efficiency, and user control in mind. The biggest takeaway from this entire experience is that switching to Linux isn't just about changing your operating system. It's about changing how you interact with your computer. It's about moving from a controlled environment to one where you have the freedom to shape your own experience. And honestly, that difference is insane. If you've ever felt limited by your current system or just curious about what else is out there, trying Linux might be one of the most eye-opening things you can do. It won't be perfect right away, and there will be a learning curve. But once you get past that, you might find it hard to go back. For me, replacing Windows with Linux wasn't just a small experiment. It completely changed how I see and use my computer. And that's something I didn't expect at all.